you for coming today. Our webinar today is the FMD, which is the False Medicine Directive, 5 years on. Where are we now with the FMD? Our presenter for just talk to you about a little bit about the domestic. So please bear in your mind that this webinar will be recorded. Microphones are muted. Videos on or off as you wish. If you experience any problems with the connectivity, please turn the video off. If difficulty with the sound, ensure that the sound or the speaker is not muted or turn them down on your computers or the phone. Try to log in off and on again if the first step did not work. Use the chat box function for questions or any comments. We may use some anonymized information from the webinar. And in the webinar, we will have a link, which is the post-webinar survey. So we will have a link on the survey, in the chat box. Grace will pop in for us that link, and you will find that link again toward the end of the event in the chat box. Leonie Clarke is a pharmacist. She is the chief executive for Irish Medicine Verification Organization.
That's great. Thanks very much, Rana. Good evening, everyone. And thanks for coming along to listen to this because I know it's not easy after a busy day to find time. So hopefully you'll find this useful. I'm just going to share my screen now. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yeah, that's working perfect.
Great, thank you. Okay, so let's see. Just a moment. Okay, so just to go through what I'm going to cover in this presentation, I'm going to do a quick recap of what FMD is about. Where are we now in terms of FMD? A little bit about is FMD making a difference, because that's the big question gets asked. I also want to talk a little bit about the Windsor framework, which I'll come to later on. A little bit about the support available from IMVO, and we can do a Q&A questions. I'm happy to take whatever questions you have. I have some backup slides, which I won't go through due to time constraints, but they will be there in the presentation that can be circulated afterwards. So a little bit about alert management, what exactly you need to do if you get alerts, and then a couple of slides on common causes of alerts, so you can look to see if you're finding alerts and what you might do to prevent them. So starting off with a recap of FMD. So just to remind you, FMD means the Falsified Medicines Directive, and this is a 2011 EU directive which was introduced several measures to tackle the growing threat of falsified medicines and ensure the trade in medicines is rigorously controlled. And there were a number of elements to this directive, including obligatory safety features on the outer packaging of medicines. So that was a 2D barcode with serial numbers in it and an anti-tamper device. Then we also had a common EU-wide logo to identify legal online pharmacies and medicines retailers. And as those of you who would sell medicines online are aware, this register is for these online retailers is operated in Ireland by the PSI. We also then had tougher rules and controls and inspections of producers of active pharmaceutical ingredients. And then finally, additional requirements for wholesalers, including extra record keeping. So the whole idea was to look at all the different ways medicines move through the medicine supply chain and try and increase the controls as much as possible. The second piece of legislation that's relevant in the context of barcodes is the Commission Delegated Regulation from 2016, and that's often known as the DR. And this sets out details about safety features and how the European Medicines Verification System is to operate. It also sets out the obligations of National Medicines Verification Organisations, or NMVOs as they're known for short, the obligations of manufacturers and marketing authorisation holders, MAHs, and then also the obligations of wholesalers, pharmacies and hospitals. So if we look at the European Medicines Verification System, it's quite an interesting model as IT systems go, because it isn't a single system, but it's a series of different components, all multiple different national systems, all connected together via an EU hub that's run by the European Medicines Verification Organisation. Pharmaceutical manufacturers and parallel distributors, they upload the barcode data from the barcodes that they print on packs into the European hub. They'll say to the European hub, okay, they're packs that are going to Ireland, and the European hub will then send that pack data to the national system here in Ireland, which is known as the IMVS, or the Irish Medicines Verification System, and that's operated by IMVO. And then at national level, we have connected pharmacies, hospitals, and wholesalers. So the system covers 29 countries. At the moment, there are 25 EU countries in the system. Greece and Italy are only joining the system next year. And the reason for that is Greece, Italy, and Belgium got derogations from the requirement to come in 2019 because they already had serialization systems in place. Now, Belgium decided at the time to join the new European system straight away, but Greece and Italy delayed. They decided to avail of the derogation, and they're now adapting their national systems to be able to connect to the European Medicines Verification System next year. We also have 3 EEA countries in the EMVS. So we have Norway, Liechtenstein, and Iceland. And Northern Ireland is part of the system until the 31st of December this year, when the Windsor Framework takes effect, and they will leave the system then. So just going back to why was the Falsified Medicines Directive necessary? And I suppose there's always been a significant problem with illegal medicines worldwide, and WHO, this is figures that's constantly thrown out there, that 10% of medicines in low and middle income countries are substandard or falsified. We know that the HPRA seized almost 900,000 dose units of falsified and other illegal medicines last year. Yesterday, they issued a press release, and it's linked there, in talking about seizing 1,400 units of illegal GLP-1 products to date in 2024. So there are large numbers of illegal medicines in circulation in the illegal supply chain. There's very little hard data on the number of falsified medicines in the legitimate supply chain in Europe, but I think the realization back before the Falsified Medicines Directive was passed was that action was needed to strengthen and harmonise the controls to prevent falsified medicines coming into the legal supply chain, because there's always a concern if you have lots of fake medicines moving around globally, that at some point they will infiltrate into the legal supply chain and end up in pharmacies and going to patients that way. The moment, most of them are coming through internet sites, but we're really trying to protect the legal supply chain with the Falsified Medicines Directive. It's important to note also that serialization of medicines is a growing trend globally and has now been mandated in approximately 80% of countries across the globe to minimize the risk of fraudulent drugs entering the market, entering the legal market in countries. So just to show you some graphics, these are some statistics I found online. Counterfeit drugs on the rise globally. You see the rise there in the left-hand graph. On the right-hand side, there are up to 500 people killed by fake medicine in sub-Saharan Africa. And it's just to give you a sense, this is a very big problem in other parts of the world and in the illegal supply chain in Europe. I've just given you an extract here from the WHO alerts on falsified and substandard medicines. I just did a screen grab of data for 24 back to 21, and all the ones circled, they're all reports of falsified medicines. So the most recent one, falsified oxymorphone, there's falsified Ozempic. If you go back to 21, plenty of examples of falsified COVID vaccine, which is not surprising. The figure I'm showing you here is just to give you an idea of the extent of serialization systems across the world, and the way this is the way things are going with medicines, that they will have serial numbers in them and they will be tracked, and there will be a capability to check the authenticity of those medicines. Because certainly one of the things I have heard frequently mentioned here in Ireland about FMD, oh, it'll never work, it'll go away, it'll have to be stopped. I think the trend globally is moving towards having medicines with serial numbers in them and scanning those medicines and having that control to keep the legal supply chain safe in terms of falsified medicines. So for the next few slides, I just want to talk a little bit about roles and responsibilities for FMD here in Ireland, because I think one of the things we are constantly told in IMVO, we're the FMD police. So we're not the FMD police. We don't have any supervisory or regulatory role in relation to FMD. So our job is to set up and manage the Irish Medicines Verification System, the IMVS. We also ensure that it operates effectively as part of the MVS by collaborating with EU counterparts. So most of the team in IMVO, we will spend probably 50% of our time working with colleagues in other countries, doing user testing of our system, doing interoperability testing. Even in IMVO, we use SolidSoft Reply as our system provider. There are 13 other countries who use them as well. We have hired shared quality manager resources. We have a shared change manager person working for us all collectively as we run this we try and harmonize and collaborate how we run this system. We assist pharmacies, hospitals, and wholesalers, and collectively we use the term end users to describe the people who are connected to our system and connecting to the system and helping with issues that arise. And that we've people on the phone every day, we sort things out for them. We work with end users and marketing authorization holders to minimise avoidable alerts. And the last piece is actually written in the European legislation. We are required to provide for the immediate investigation of alerts that represent potential incidents of falsification, ensure that the HPRA, the European Medicines Agency, and the EU Commission are notified should falsification be confirmed. Now, when we get details of an alert coming through to us, we just don't know all of the circumstances relating to the pack that have led to that alert. So, for example, if that pack has been double decommissioned in a pharmacy, we may suspect that, but we can't actually confirm that unless the pharmacy tells us. Similarly, if something has happened at the site of the MAHs, we need to talk to them and get feedback. So this is why you will hear from us if there are alerts. It's because we're required to do as much as we can to investigate these alerts. Ultimately, what will happen is, and what happens in many other countries is, if we're not able to get the information we need to close out the alert to say, right, we definitely know the pack is not fake, or we definitely know it is fake, at some point we will start to escalate those alerts. And in the case of pharmacies, they'll go to the PSI. We've already had a number of situations where MAHs haven't been giving us the information we need, and the HPRA has intervened with them to follow up with them. The little graphic on the right-hand side then just is taken from our current strategy. So it really sets out at sort of a high level what all of that looks like in terms of how we work. So our core purpose is to run the system. The next layer of what we do is enabling and supporting people who use the system, and then finally adding value. So we're constantly thinking about ways in which IMVO and the IMVS can add value for the members of our organisation, IMVS users, including yourselves, and ultimately patients. But that's something we haven't spent as much time on as the other two, but it's certainly something in the years ahead I think we will be starting to think more about within the constraints of what's permitted by the law in terms of how the system is to be used. The Department of Health, then, their role in relation to all of this is they're responsible for legislation and policy related to safety features with their scope for national decisions, and they're also accountable to the EU Commission for any non-compliance with EU legislation. So if, for example, there's a perception that Ireland is not complying with all the FMD obligations, the department would be contacted by the Commission, and that certainly has happened in France, where there was a large non-compliance by pharmacies in particular. They weren't connected to the system for a long time, but the European Commission is now sitting on the French government to make sure that that happens. We then have what's called National Competent Authorities, or NCAs, and these basically are the entities responsible for supervising the IMVS and ensuring that all parties, including end users, manufacturers, MAHs, and IMVO, comply with their obligations. So there are two NCAs. We have the HPRA, which, as you would expect, oversees manufacturers, MAHs, wholesalers. We're also under the jurisdiction of the HPRA, and they will lead the investigation if falsified medicines are identified. And then obviously the PSI is responsible for retail pharmacy businesses and pharmacists. So we work collectively with the Department of Health and with the HPRA and the PSI in the Safety Features Oversight Group to really collectively try and come to decisions around things like, the use and learn period. When did it start? When did it end? The messaging around what are we doing about the Windsor framework. That's all been agreed working with these organisations. Moving on then to the individual players in the medicine supply chain in terms of their roles and responsibilities for FMD. So for manufacturers and MAHs, they're required obviously to manufacture the packs with 2D barcodes and anti-tampering devices. They must ensure the data is correctly uploaded to the MVS for all the markets in which the product is to be marketed. And in the early days, this was a bit hit and miss, but certainly this is something that I would say there's very few problems. The data is generally uploaded on time, so we don't get many alerts related to missing data. And then if there are alerts generated in their products, those alerts are notified to them. So if you scan a pack belonging to a particular company, they will see the alert as well as us seeing it. Wholesalers, they have various roles and responsibilities. And one of the things we often hear as well, why do we need to scan packs? Because the wholesalers have to do it. The wholesalers don't actually have to scan all the packs that go through their warehouses. The legislation spells out that they have to scan returns from customers. So this is one of the reasons if you send back decommissioned packs, they can't return those to stock. And the fact that it's decommissioned will be picked up when they scan it on the way back in as a return. So that's one thing just to flag to you. If you're sending back packs to your wholesaler, make sure that that pack hasn't been decommissioned. And if it's a case that it has been decommissioned, you do have 10 days to revert that decommission. So do that before you send the pack back to the wholesaler. Otherwise, it's very likely they'll send it straight back to you. If they receive packs from any source other than the manufacturer, the MAH, or the manufacturer MAH's designated wholesaler. So suppose say they buy it from some small different wholesaler, then they are required to check those packs. And this is linked with risk. It's linked with the idea that there's potentially greater risk with sourcing from entities other than the manufacturer MAH. They obviously have to mark decommissioned packs as destroyed, stolen, locked as appropriate. So locked is quarantined. There's also then a provision in the European legislation in the delegated regulation. It's known as Article 23, decommissioning, where wholesalers decommission packs supplied to certain Article 23 locations, which are defined in national law. And here in Ireland, that would include GPs, prisons, vets, and they're exempt from the requirement to do their own decommissioning. And obviously then wholesalers, and they do get alerts in their own warehouses, so they're required to investigate those as well. Pharmacies and hospitals, the requirement in the delegated regulation is to authenticate the pack prior to supply to patients by scanning the 2D barcode and checking the anti-tampering device. If the scan generates an alert, follow-up action is required. So you need to work out what has been the cause of that alert. Is it something that you've done in the pharmacy? Or if you can't find something in the pharmacy, so if you can't see that there might be a scanner problem, or you can't see that it was decommissioned twice, you just can't work out that there's something in your site, then what will happen is ourselves and the marketing authorization holder will have a look at it, and we will give you feedback via NMVS alerts if we found out anything. But the pack must be withheld from supply until falsification has been ruled out. And that goes back to your obligation to authenticate the pack. So you have to be satisfied the pack is authentic. If the pack appears to have been tampered with, so it may scan fine, but it might actually, you might look at the anti-tampering device and it looks like someone has done something to it. Don't supply the pack and report your concern to the HPRA as a suspected quality defect via their online reporting system, and we've given you the link there. So I suppose, given that the title of the presentation is where we are 5 years on, we'll just look at that for the next few minutes. So looking at the EMVS 5 years on, just looking at the numbers, huge level of activity in this system. There's 14 billion transactions per year across Europe. That's quite a deterrent effect for any counterfeiters that are looking at Europe as a potential place to infiltrate the legal supply chain with falsified medicines. There's 115,000 community pharmacies connected across Europe. There's 4,000 wholesalers, there's 2,900 MAHs and 6,000 hospitals. So it's a very large system with very large numbers of people connected and using it across Europe. It's also a very stable system. There's very little downtime. There's very little, there's very few delays with how it works. So that's something, it's taken us time to really refine it and make sure it's working well, but certainly we're satisfied now that the basics or the fundamentals are there with the system now. Looking in Ireland then, where we've gone over the last 5 years, so our end user alert rates in Ireland are consistently in the region of 0.05% of scans. And I think that's really, we've seen huge efforts by yourselves, by MAHs to minimise avoidable alerts. We've seen scanners properly configured. The FMD software has improved. We work with the software providers as well to try and iron out any software bugs that cause problems. The MAHs have really focused on making sure the data is uploaded on time, the correct data is uploaded, so you're not going to find a problem when you scan a pack that the system can't find the data for that pack. From an IMVO perspective, we're in continuous communication with pharmacies, hospitals, wholesalers and MAHs and the most common issues seen by us in order to help prevent further alerts. And if we see, for example, in an individual pharmacy, we suddenly see a whole plethora of alerts appearing that look like a scanner, we'll actually phone you and say, look, there seems to be something wrong with your scanner. Here's how you fix it. Because, and the same with an MAH, if we see alerts coming through suggesting data has been uploaded, we'll contact them and they'll get the data uploaded, and that'll prevent further alerts with that batch. In turn, we've seen a huge increase in pharmacy and hospital engagement with ourselves, particularly since the use and learn period ended back in 22. NMVS alerts is our alert management system that we use to communicate with you about alerts. So when you have an alert in your pharmacy, you'll get an email from NMVS alert shortly afterwards. And what that will do is give you a link to a web page where, if we know what the root cause of the alert is, we'll put it in there and we'll have closed out the alert. And if you see that, then you can go ahead and supply the pack. Similarly, if you know that the cause is on your side and you put that in, then that'll allow us to close out the alert, and the MAH can stop looking as well. If the MAH on their side, they're looking to see what's gone on. If they've got information, they'll feed it back there. So that's the ideal way from our perspective that you communicate with us. So it's very, you do need to give us feedback if there's anything on your side. As I've mentioned already, there's been continuous improvement of the system to enhance the user experience in performance and eliminate system-related alerts. There were a few of these in the early days. The decommission rates have improved in Ireland, but we're still not close to full scanning. And this is the biggest issue we have here, is that we're not anywhere near where we need to be in terms of all the packs being scanned. So I suppose what are the most common causes of alerts in Ireland? It's actually exempt medicinal products or unlicensed medicines, to use the alternative phrase, or ULMs. What happens is we have large batches of these can arrive into the country already in a decommissioned state. And I'll give you a couple of examples of these later on, but these really tend to cause most of our alerts. The next big root cause we see a lot of borrowing of packs between pharmacies. And what's interesting to note is these packs, when they're borrowed and received in the second pharmacy, what happens is they're scanned and they generate an alert that says already decommissioned in another location. And it's generally where the pack came from. So sometimes it's hard to understand why was the pack decommissioned when it was sent. But the bottom line is, if you are lending a pack to someone and you know it's been decommissioned, so suppose, say, you dispensed it to a patient, you missed the 10-day window for recommission, you put it back on your shelf yourself, just put a sticker on it and say it's decommissioned. And if it's sent to another pharmacy, just make sure they're aware that it's decommissioned and they don't scan it again. Because the problem is, they'll get the alert if they scan it. That alert will come to us. It'll go to the marketing authorization. The alert will go to the MAH. We all have to go into a whole big investigation of this alert. And that can be avoided by simply making sure that they're aware that the pack has been decommissioned and not to scan it again. We see a few alerts due to wholesaler errors. So there's hospital aggregation. The European Commission does permit hospitals to have the barcodes scanned by the wholesaler and sent in a data file to the hospitals on the invoice, and then that can be decommissioned in the hospital. Now, it's not permitted for community pharmacies. They've only said it's possible for hospitals. We also see them repeated scanning. Like we had one example last year where we had 1,000 packs that were being decommissioned as destroyed, and they did every single one of them twice. So we had 1,000 alerts, double decommission as destroyed. It doesn't happen very often, but people make mistakes, so that's not the end of the world. Once we know what's happened, then we can close the alerts. We do see some MAH procedural alerts. We sometimes see delays in data upload. Now, that has largely been eliminated because most of the wholesalers now provide a service to the companies that they bring products into the market for. They will check a couple of the packs in the batch at goods inwards, and they will identify early if the data hasn't been uploaded. And by the time those packs work their way through and are supplied out to pharmacies, the data will be there. And again, sometimes we see them repeating bulk transactions in error. So I have some more information about the common causes of alerts in the backup slides if you want to have a read of that. But what I have there covers most of the key things now. So just to show you the alert rate, we measure the alert rate every week. And if you look at the first part of the year, we were cruising along really nicely between 0.02 and 0.04. And in fact, kind of mid-year, we were really consistently in the region of 0.02, 0.03, which was fantastic. We've seen, unfortunately, it lift in the last few weeks, and this is responsible for most of it. So we've, unfortunately, unlicensed medicines coming into the market, and we've Eastermon in particular has caused hundreds of alerts. We have 4 batches that were decommissioned as a sample in error by the manufacturer. We've no idea how they did that. It's been discussed with the HBA. It happened outside the country before they came into Ireland. And there's the batch numbers there. And every single pack in those batches that's scanned is going to generate an alert. and they're generating lots of alerts. And the same with eutrogestin. Eutrogestin has been a continuous problem for the last 12 to 18 months. We see large numbers of eutrogestin French packs that coming into Ireland in a decommissioned state. So they were decommissioned as exported, which means that it was originally exported outside the EU. So what happened was they were sent from France to Switzerland, and there seems to be a lot of sourcing of these packs from Switzerland. They're coming back into Ireland, and the problem is when those packs are scanned, they are causing alerts. So these are causing large numbers of alerts, and they've had the impact of increasing our alert rate. Those two products alone, by what you see there, so we're up to like 0.1%. I think we've one very bad week. We got as far as 0.12. So you will be seeing more alerts if you're scanning those packs in the pharmacies, because they will cause alerts because of this decommissioning that took place outside the country before they came in here. Just to remind you that we did issue guidance on scanning unlicensed medicines back in 22. This was guidance developed by IMVO with the HPRA to prevent scanning issues with unlicensed medicines, and these are actually out of scope of FMD. And basically, the main piece of advice here is if you know the PAC's ULM, don't scan it, as the IMVS may not recognise the PAC. Now, it may, and in most cases it will, but we can't always guarantee that it will. So the advice is not to scan them. If you inadvertently scan a ULM, get an alert, you may supply it unless you've overriding concerns that are falsified medicines involved or belief that the pack has been interfered with, or the pack is flagged, obviously, as expired, recalled, withdrawn, stolen, or destroyed. Always check the anti-tampering device, and if you've any reason to believe, you report that to the HPRA. We do know, based on the large numbers of alerts that we see with eutrogestin and estromon, that people are scanning unlicensed medicines. Just be mindful of the fact if you do scan them, and we have batches like those estromon and eutrogestin, you are likely to get alerts with some of those. So it's, we know it's very difficult in busy pharmacies to work out what to scan and what not to scan, but this is just, unfortunately, there is not a lot we can do with this other than give you this advice. Other issues to watch out for: vaccines. If you get vaccines from the National Cold Chain Service, check if they've already been decommissioned by them, and there will be a sticker on them. If they have, don't decommission them again. And the reason for that is if you do that, you will get an alert which would say pack already decommissioned at another location. Another thing to just keep an eye out for is that making sure every day when you start the FMD software that it's in the correct scanning mode, because we do see situations where the PSI require us to give them a data showing transactions in pharmacies, the total number of transactions and the total number of decommission transactions. And if you haven't turned your pharmacy or your scanner into decommission mode, what will happen is you'll be verifying, but you won't be decommissioning. So just double check that it's in the right scanning mode. So just to look at the scanning activity. So again, what we have on this graph is just showing the numbers of scans per week, and it's quite interesting. You can actually see the little dips. I'll just, if you can see that on screen, that I think it tends to dip in the weeks when we have bank holidays. So I think that's St. Patrick's Day, that's Easter, May bank holiday, June bank holiday, August bank holiday. No, maybe wrong. I think that might be August, and that's October. It's quite interesting. If you look at this pattern across Europe, it's the same. So you typically see an increase at the start of the month, a dip mid-month, and an increase at the end of the month. And it's quite interesting to see that seems to be the pattern of dispensing across Europe. But I suppose the key takeaway from this graph is it's been consistently increasing. So I think our highest this year, we had 2 million scans in 1 week. Most recently, we had over 2 million scans. So there's a lot of transaction, a lot of scanning going on. Fortunately, it's not enough, and we do know that people aren't scanning everything. And the reason we know this is because at European level, data is collected on decommissioning rates, and this data is published by MPSI. This data is made available to the European Commission. And you can see on this that year to date, Ireland is running at about 70%. So the two in red are the really bad ones. They're Liechtenstein. They only, I think, have 2 or 3 pharmacies. If one pharmacy isn't scanning, it really drops the rate. And Northern Ireland, they've kind of lost interest in the whole thing because it's going to stop there at the end of the year. But we're one of the lowest of the rest of them in Europe. Even the French colleagues, who were very bad for a long time, they were down at 20%. They're up at 72%. So this information is collected every quarter and is very publicly available in the decommission rate. So it is something, I think there's a general sense, and I know the PSI has been doing a lot of work to increase. This is their job to try and get that decommission rate up. What we'll do is we'll try and help you work out if there's some reason why you're having problems scanning, or if your decommissioning scans are not being captured properly because you're in verify mode. That's where we step in to try and deal with that. I suppose the big question is FMD making a difference? I think what's interesting here is to look at the EU Commission published a report on FMD in July this year. It was mandated by the Falsified Medicines Directive that they would publish a report within 5 years of the system going live. And this report was developed following extensive consultation with national authorities, national medicines verification organisations, and EMVS users across Europe. And we know, for example, there was a survey last year that was sent around in Europe, and I know the IQ circulated to its members. There was a huge participation from Ireland in this. We were interviewed by this group, the HBRA was interviewed. What I've done in the next few slides is just give you some of the interesting points out of the report, because I think it gives you a good sense of where we're at with FMD in general. So the first point is it's critical, this is the Commission's words, it's critical that the measures in the Falsified Medicines Directive and Delegated Regulation are fully implemented to reach their full potential. So they're saying is not everything has been done yet. They went on to say that the FMD and the DR have had two main positive results. They make it more difficult to introduce illegal products into the legal supply chain by increasing the hurdles and the cost of falsification for criminals. Because the problem now, if you think about it, they have to put a barcode on, they have to do an anti-tamper device, they have to make it look good, so that illegal products tend to stay in the illegal circuit. They also generate data for investigators to make it possible to detect suspicious packages and track falsifying activities. So certainly the system generates a lot of data on, packs that are in the system, and certainly the HBRA and all the other competent authorities across Europe, they have access to the system to generate reports. They can generate audit trails showing the transactions in the system. They can look at the number of percentage of packs and batches that have been decommissioned, and that helps them if they're investigation and falsification. The next point, a big point really in the report, it is not yet possible to draw final conclusions as to the effects of the FMD delegated regulation and the actual ability of the EMVS to effectively detect all falsified medicinal products, because there's a number of reasons. First of all, some end users are not connected. Now here in Ireland, all end users are connected. So all the pharmacies, hospitals and wholesalers are connected. 26% of medicines with safety features in Europe are not decommissioned. So the point is, if they're not decommissioned, well, you don't know that there aren't fake ones in there somewhere. Some IT systems at national level still trigger too many false alerts. And I think, to be fair to the software providers here, and again, the work done in pharmacies and hospitals, that's not really an issue here in Ireland. We probably only see maybe 10, 20 software related alerts a week now. Like in the early days, we were looking at hundreds a week. So that's well under control now. The other piece, and this is an interesting point, there's a lack of standard procedures to qualify cases as confirmed cases of falsification, and there's a lack of centralised reporting across the EU, making comparisons and trend analysis particularly difficult. So it's actually hard to work out and compare the data, pull the data together from the different countries and compare it. And they also made the point that Greece and Italy are only due to join the system in 2025. So, that is part of the EU that's not covered by the MVS at the moment. On the issue of falsifications, the report concluded there's been substantial and steady progress in detecting falsified medicines since the FMD and DR came into application. The current scope of the system with its flexibility. So the system, in addition to identifying falsified packs, it also can be used for reimbursement, pharmacovigilance, and pharmacoepidemiology. Now, there are some countries where it's already used for reimbursement. So the FMD scan provides data that's used for reimbursement, not in Ireland, but in other countries. Pharmacovigilance, that's where you would be able to run a report to see how many packs were of a particular product were sold, because if you're trying to work out what's the incident rate of a side effect, you need to know what's the total number of packs that have been supplied versus the number of side effects. Pharmacoepidemiology hasn't really been looked at to any great extent so far, and I think this is where we all think it might get interesting. So this is the use of medicines in populations. It'd be interesting to see where that goes. So what the report concludes is that the system appropriately balances the risks posed by falsified medicines with the administrative burden involved in preventing these risks. So it does recognise that there's administrative burden, but it's saying, on balance, even the administrative burden is outweighed by the risk posed by falsified medicines. Most cases of falsification have been detected in the illegal supply chain, And the categories most likely to be involved are expensive medicines such as anti-cancer injections and lifestyle drugs, so Ozempic, that type of thing. No surprises there. And I think the last thing is quite reassuring. Medicinal products purchased in official channels, physical or online authorized pharmacies, can be assumed to be safe. And that's because the belief is that the system is helping to keep the illegal medicines and the falsified medicines in the illegal supply chain. So the report then, it flags at the end the areas that the Commission is actively working on, and it includes the decommission rates, because they do want to see all the packs in Europe decommissioned. Because they'll say, well, we don't know for sure if we're finding the fakes, we don't decommission everything. Um, they're interested in the technical issues that trigger large numbers of false alerts, because basically that discourages people from using the system. If you have an awful lot of noise as well going on with false alerts due to technical procedural issues, it makes it hard to focus in and find the ones that are really indicating fakes. And then the anti-tampering device has been a bit of an issue. There's been very little guidance on this, and I'm sure you've seen some fairly substandard looking anti-tampering devices. I've seen some where there's a little micro glue dot on the inside of a flap, and it's very easy. You could easily put something in around it. So there is a view now that that's something that needs to be looked at, having more definitive guidance about that. So have any falsified medicines been detected by the EMVS? Here in Ireland, we've had no counterfeit or falsified medicine detected since in 2019 when FMD was implemented. But bear in mind, approximately 30% of packs aren't being scanned. So, that is a constraint on that. The MVS is designed primarily as a deterrent, and we've already mentioned that we've approximately 14 billion transactions each year in Europe and about 1.9 million per week on average in Ireland. Now, the MVS overall has proven its value in finding fakes. So, falsified medicines were identified at wholesale level by the Czech and Slovakian NMVS's National Medicines Verification Systems in 22. And you might recall last October 23, there was a lot of publicity about the fact that falsified Ozempic packs have been identified in the legal supply chains in Austria, Germany, and the UK. And I suppose what this really reinforces is, as pharmacies, as hospitals, you are the last line of defense. So, if everything else goes wrong, the scan in the pharmacy could be the thing that finds the fake pack. So always keep that in mind. It's a real Swiss cheese model. You might say, well, my scan on its own is not making a difference, but if all the other controls fail, it could actually make the difference. It could be the one that finds the fake. Just to flag to you the Ozempic example. So this was, there were syringes basically identified at wholesalers in the EU and the UK last year, and it turned out that they actually contained insulin, and there were patients harmed by those in Austria. One of the things I want to flag to you is the type of alert that was seen with the Ozempic falsification. So pack already decommissioned, supplied, dispensed at another location. This is one alert that actually is one that really needs to be looked at closely, because there are a number of root causes for this type of alert, including the following red flag causes that really would, these are the ones where you could see a falsification. So you might have the same serial number being used on different falsified packs by counterfeiters, so that would generate that alert. And then there have been situations, there was a case a few years ago where packaging, and this was one of the cases picked up in the EMVS, where Humira packs were stolen. The packaging was stolen from a hospital in one country, filled with fake medicines and reintroduced into the supply chain, that should be chain there. And basically the second scan then identified that the packs were fake because they had already been decommissioned. If you see these alerts in your pharmacy, it's very important that you need to stop, because you don't have enough information to be able to draw any conclusions about the authenticity of the pack. And you need to contact us, because only we can run the audit trail and see where was the previous decommission action undertaken. You won't have that visibility. Now, we'll do this really quickly if you contact us. Like we're talking, if you ring us, now we'll be back to you in 30 minutes with the answer. So you're not going to be waiting days. And packs that generate these responses must be quarantined until a genuine reason for the prior decommission has been established and falsification has been ruled out. So just to be very careful with these alerts, because these are the ones that really could indicate, and did indicate, Ozempic falsifications last year in other countries. So I'm just going to talk very briefly about the Windsor framework, because this is something that's coming towards us at the end of the year. So the Windsor Framework is a post-Brexit legal agreement between the EU and the UK adopted in March last year, which adjusts the operation of the Northern Ireland Protocol in several areas, including medicines. And it's basically all about ensuring that people in Northern Ireland have access to medicines on the same basis as the rest of the UK. So it's due to take effect on the 1st of January. Now, there are certain written guarantees have to be given by the UK to the EU. Before then, we're not aware that they have been given, but everyone is expecting that this will be the date. We don't anticipate any issues with this. Arising from the Windsor Framework, a few things are going to happen in the UK that will have an implications here, and I'll explain in a moment why. So FMD will no longer apply in Northern Ireland on the 1st of January. So the UK, as it's got the UKNI National Medicines Verification System, as it's known, will be disconnected from the EMVS, and all the data in that system will be permanently erased. UK packs may still carry 2D barcodes. So even though they're no longer in the EMVS, the UK packs can still carry 2D barcodes so long as they cannot be recognised by the EMVS. And because they've been completely disconnected from the system, there's no ability for the system to recognise them because there's no data left to check them against. And UK packs must be labelled with UK only from the 1st of January 25. So in relation to all of this, I suppose one question, and I'll just deal with this before I go on to the impact of the Windsor Framework here. A lot of people ask, well, are they going to have a new UK system? And there is legislation in the UK that provides the legal basis for setting up a UK falsified medicine system post-Brexit. The Windsor Framework Q&A document from the MHRA, which is the HPRA equivalent over in the UK, it states, this is the current position, the UK is considering all options for national falsified medicine system, including the do-nothing options. Basically, they haven't decided yet. Now, notwithstanding the lack of clarity on the future system, what does appear to be happening is that many manufacturers actually plan to avail of the option to continue to apply 2D barcodes and anti-tampering devices released to the UK market after the 1st of January. A couple of reasons for that is one, there's for them to take off the 2D barcodes actually requires a whole pile of re-engineering of their manufacturing lines. Secondly, they take the view, well, if there is a UK system down the road, we're not going to take them off now and potentially put them back on in 2 or 3 or 4 years, whenever it might happen. And then thirdly, these barcodes are quite widely used in the UK for things like NHS scan for safety. So the net impact of all of this is UK packs will continue to carry 2D barcodes, and that becomes important in the context of these packs ultimately ending up in Ireland. So as you know, we have a lot of links to the UK in terms of joint, i.e. UK packs, and we also have extensive use of UK only packs sourced as exempt medicinal products or ULMs to address shortages here. As I flagged before, despite the current advice not to scan ULMs, in practice, many ULMs are scanned. And at the moment, these scans are generally successful because the data is available in the EMVS to check these packs. So if you scan a UK pack at the moment, it's not found in the Irish system. It sends a message to the European hub. The European hub says, yep, that's in the UK system. It goes off and it checks it, and it can come back and verify and decommission the pack by what we call intermarket transactions. The big problem we have is from the 1st of January 25, the UK system will be gone. There is no data in that system. There is no system to check against. And if UK packs carrying 2D barcodes are scanned here, the option of verifying and decommissioning these packs via intermarket transactions against the UK NI system is gone. And from the 1st of January, every UK pack with a 2D barcode that is scanned around will generate some sort of an exception alert. Now, there's various permutations and combinations, but one way or another, you will not get a successful scan with the UK pack. You will get an amber or a red alert. And to illustrate that, I suppose, if you buy, say, 12 packs of a particular UK product on the 20th of December and you supply 6 of them between the 20th of December and the 31st of December and you scan them and the data is in the UK system, they'll actually scan fine. From the 1st of January on, the remaining 6 will not scan fine because there's simply no UK system to check them against. And this is true of every European country. UK single market packs find their way all over Europe to address shortage situations. So we're not the only ones feeling this. Malta, like ourselves, is very heavily reliant on UK packs. Other countries also receive large numbers of UK packs. Now, one of the questions we've been asked is, well, will the UK only label help to pick out the UK packs in a busy dispensary? This is going to be of limited value, at least initially, because first of all, the requirement won't apply to packs already in circulation prior to the 1st of January. And they could remain in circulation in the UK and ultimately find their way here for, depending on the shelf life and depending on many packs, for potentially 2, 3 years. The UK only may be printed anywhere in the pack. Some companies plan to put it into the human readable barcode data panel, like I've shown you there. Now, the requirement in the Windsor framework is the text must be conspicuous and clearly legible, but the MHRA guidance has said that it has to be set at least 7-point font, and we've typed the little UK only in small little red letters. That's 7 points. It's not very big. So we don't think that's going to be that helpful in terms of identifying these UK packs. In terms of preparing for all of this, I suppose we've spent a lot of time working with the Department of Health, the HPRA, PSI, colleagues and other NMVOs and MVO over the last 18 months to try and work out what Windsor framework is going to, what sort of impacts. We have been able to fix some of the issues via changes to the system. However, we cannot technically prevent UK packs from generating alerts when scanned from the 1st of January. It's just not possible to do that. Equally, we have no ability to change the effective date of the Windsor framework to a better time of the year. We completely understand it's the worst possible time of year, peak cold and flu season, end of the Christmas period. This date was agreed by the UK government and the EU 18 months ago, and it can't be changed unless the UK don't give their written guarantees in time. But as I said, that's not going to happen. So we've been doing a lot of communication to explain all of this to pharmacies, hospitals, wholesalers, etc., and what to do to minimise problems. HPRA has published guidance to assist manufacturers, MAHs and wholesalers, because there's a whole pile of stuff around how medicines move between Ireland and Northern Ireland. So if you do happen to have a wholesale authorisation, you need to look at that as well. And then in terms of planning for all of this, we've been gearing up the IMVO service desk to be ready for the beginning of January. So we've done simple things like, the office will be manned and there will be service available throughout the period. One thing we just need to remind you, and this is something we've been asked to do by the PSI and the HPRA, FMD still applies across the EU, and the FMD obligations for pharmacies, hospitals and wholesalers in Ireland are unchanged as a result of the Windsor framework. So just then to remind you, how can you avoid problems with the UK packaging 1st of January? And it goes back to the original unlicensed medicine guidance, don't scan them. And the advice, if you do scan them, it's the same as for unlicensed medicines. You can go ahead and supply it unless you've some reason looking at that pack to think that it's falsified or it's been interfered with, or if the pack is expired. Now, one thing to flag to you is because the UK system is gone, your software may not tell you that the pack is expired because that date is often picked up from the other national system where the pack is stored. So just watch out for that. You could miss an expired UK pack because the system may not give you that response anymore because it doesn't have access to the information. So the advice remains the same. Check the anti-tampering device, and if you have any reason to believe it's interfered with, report it to the HPRA. So just to reiterate, the key thing is don't scan those packs, otherwise you will get alerts or exceptions. So just some useful resources. So our service desk is open every day except Christmas Day. We'll give you the contact details at the end. There's a dedicated page on our website. We have been running webinars throughout October and November. The slides and the recording are available on our website. We will hold a mop-up webinar in the next couple of weeks if there's demand, but we think probably all the information is on our website. We put articles into the November editions of the IP Review and Irish Pharmacist. We'll be sending you out some A5 cards just with that summary of the guidance that I gave you in the previous slide, and then just remind you about the HPRA Q&A if you're involved in the wholesale side. So I suppose what can you do to minimise the impact of the Windsor framework in your practice? I think make sure your teams are all aware of what will happen, i.e. that all UK packs will generate alerts if scanned. Encourage everyone involved in FMD scanning to watch our webinar or to read the slides. Have the printed cards to hand in the dispense so information is there. Stress to your teams that the only way to prevent these is not to scan the packs. And then contact our service desk if you have any queries. And I suppose in general terms, just keep scanning Irish packs and follow up on any alerts that arise so that we can really optimise the value of FMD in protecting patients in Ireland from falsified medicines. Like every single scan that's done, every single alert that's investigated is making Europe making Ireland a very difficult place to try and put fake medicines into the legal supply chain. So just support available from IMVO. I just want to show you very quickly our team. So we have an operations manager, an IT manager, a quality manager, our admin and communications executive, Sarah McLaughlin. Some of you may have spoken to Sarah. She looks after all the IMVS registration and connection queries. So say, for example, if you need a new client credentials, if you contact our service, Sarah's the person you'll end up talking to. We then have two people working in the operations team that deal with alerts every day and deal with scanning queries. So if you have an alert and you get a call from us, it'll be Paul or Nicola who will make that call. And if you have information, if you go into NMBS alerts and you see that there's been information inputted by IMVO into the alert page, it'll be either Paul or Nicola will have done that. And then our quality manager, Lorraine, is supported by a quality administrator because we effectively have a GMP type quality system. So our service desk, the phone number's there, the email, opening hours weekdays 8 to 8, Saturday 9 to 6, Sunday public holidays 11 to 6. That will include New Year's Day. You can contact us about an alert, use NMBS alerts or email us at alert.support.imvo.ie. One thing we would ask if you're having problems with your FMD software, contact your software provider first because chances are it's a software issue. But if you do need to contact us, there's no problem. And there's a few other bits and pieces there. Website, we've guidance video and a range of topics, including NMBS alerts. The live IMVS state. So if you want to check if the system is working, we give you a link there. But actually, go into the homepage of our website. It's available. You'll see it on the website. And there will be the Windsor Framework page is linked from the website. If you want bespoke support sessions for your pharmacy, we can organise. And we do this from time to time. We can set up a session by Zoom, Teams, or just by phone where one of the ops team will talk you through any of the queries that you have. And we've previously sent out FMD reference cards and further copies are available on request. And there's a few of them here. What's out of scope of FMD, destroying packs. We've seen a few alerts linked with how you don't need to destroy a pack basically if it's expired. And then we have some guidance on lending and borrowing packs. We have some more of these left. If you want them, just contact our service desk and we'll send them out to you. Few other bits and pieces. We're on LinkedIn. X, not so active anymore, but we still have an X account. PSI then has information, as does the HPRA. And that's basically my quick run through. And as I said, there's some backup slides there, overview of alert management and common causes of alerts. So if you want to have a look at those afterwards when the IOP send out the slides, please do. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. I'm just going to have a look in the chat here and see what's here.
Hi, yeah, it's actually the chat box is a bit busy today. There are a few
That's no
questions.
problem. I'll just work my way down through them really quickly. Okay, there's a lack of info and education at the pharmacy level on how to deal and engage with the FMD process. So there are certainly resources available on our website. And one of the things we're actually doing now is we're now trying to get in with students. So we're now starting to try and do training for students. We're doing it for pharmacy students, technician students. My Appel intern actually ran a session today for all the Appel interns in fourth year, and he would have talked through the detail. So all the detail about what to do with alerts is in those backup slides. I don't have time to run through them now, but certainly have a read of those. Was mandatory training ever explored? Interesting, to be honest. I'll be honest with you, the take-up rate in our webinars and the engagement is not great. So those of you who are on this call, you're clearly interested and you're clearly committed to coming to training events. Unfortunately, there's a few people out there don't really engage, but there's certainly plenty of resources there, and we're happy to do whatever it takes to support with alerts. Could the alert system be linked with the store health? We've looked into that this year, and unfortunately, no, it's not possible to link our system. We actually have explored that a couple of times. And we do understand that would be easier to use health mail. One of the things we have done with alerts, we did actually a couple of years ago, one of the pharmacy interns we had in here, we got them to develop a database of generic email addresses for pharmacies because we found in the early days people tended to give us personal email addresses. So if that person wasn't working, the emails weren't received. So we have tried to move towards having a generic email address for your pharmacy, and that would be the one. But we can't link it to healthmail. We've looked into that a couple of times, and unfortunately, that's not possible. So we do appreciate that would make life a lot easier, but it's not possible because we're outside the kind of ecosystem, the HSE ecosystem. How do you recommission? There's a recommission mode on your computer, and it actually varies on how it's set up from, software providers to the next. So have a look at the training materials of your software provider, and just if you've any questions, ask them. We don't unfortunately have a copy of the training materials. We've asked them for it because it would be helpful for us to know how to do these things and have a look and see. But there is a mode on your computer that will allow you to recommission. Yeah, this is a very good question. Are ULMs not the most likely meds to be falsified? It seems, yes, that is the big debate that has taken place with this whole advice. And we could well revisit the ULM guidance this year because the fact that we can, for ULMs coming from Europe, for the vast majority, that we can safely scan them. The problem is the UK ones, there's nothing that will make the UK ones scannable successfully after the 1st of January. So there's no point scanning those. We may revisit, and it's something we discuss with the HPRA from time to time, that we are potentially leaving this gap. So that is actually a very valid point. You're trying to balance up, the problems we see we just see so many alerts with unlicensed medicines because of them coming into the country in a decommissioned state, because for various reasons. If the anti-tamper tab has been broken and received from the wholesaler, should be returning this? Yeah, I think what you should actually do is notify the HPRA first of all, because so that is a product quality defect as a minimum. So the advice is there to return it, notify the HPRA, and then maybe see what they have to say before you return it. What do you do if you get a red alert? A red alert is the one that really makes you stop. So, for example, you'll get a red alert if the pack is expired. You'll get a red alert if the pack is recalled. You'll get a red alert if it's alert of what we call a potential falsification. With the potential falsification, you do have to stop and you have to find out what's going on before you supply the pack. So if you get this pack has already been decommissioned, another occasion, you do need to get to the bottom of that and be satisfied that you know what was behind that before you, otherwise you have not authenticated the pack. On the software, we've asked all the software providers to put a little link on the actual software itself. So when the alert pops up on screen, if you click on that link, that will bring you to a page on our website that will tell you exactly what to do with that alert. It'll tell you exactly what to look at, what to check. It's kind of bespoke information for each different alert type. So use that. Can we just ignore orange alerts unless we hear from you? No, the problem is the orange alerts aren't actually reported to us like alerts. So the orange alert will be something like, um, for example, you have a pack, you're not sure whether it was decommissioned or not. You want to check it. So what you do is you do a verification scan on it. In that situation, it comes back and says, yeah, it was decommissioned. Now, the problem with that is whether that needs something to be done with it or not depends on what was going on there. So if you had intended to decommission that pack and the verification scan simply confirms that what you did was correct, then that's fine. If you thought the pack was active and you've now verified it and you've identified this decommission, then you do need to do something about that. But again, our guidance per the link will tell you exactly. There's so many different permutations and combinations, and I know this is all very complicated, but um, that is the way to have a look at it. I wouldn't just ignore it. The whole idea of the orange is you should stop and have a quick look at it and just check, is there anything I need to be worrying about here? What we find is people who tend to engage with this tend to get very familiar with this. So we'll have a pharmacist ring us up and say, look, something's gone wrong with my scanner. I'm seeing loads of exceptions coming in. I know that happens when the scanner isn't working. Um, Training in how to operate the FMD system would be great. Again, it's software specific. This is the problem. The software providers all do different things. And we don't, like, we require them to make sure that it talks to the system correctly. It's a bit like your pharmacy dispensing systems. There's different ways to do things in different stuff, but they do provide training materials. We certainly encourage you to use the training materials that they do provide. I didn't know you can recommission within 10 days. That's okay. That's good. You've learned something. If the webinar, that's the piece of information you've gone away with. So that's useful to know. And just be aware that 10-day rule is actually hardwired into the European legislation. It's written in the delegated regulation, and the system is actually won't allow you to recommission it after 10 days. That was a requirement that the system cannot allow you to do that. So just be aware of that. So if you're in the habit of dispensing stuff at the start of the month, waiting for patients to come and pick it up, keep an eye on it, particularly if it's some sort of a high cost medicine that you think potentially if it's not needed, you might be returning. We've had one or two situations where people didn't recommission stuff on time. And we had one particular situation where someone was left with something that was worth about 3 grand. And the wholesaler wouldn't take it back because they couldn't put it back into saleable stock because it had been decommissioned. It couldn't be reversed. So just be careful with those packs. Really watch the stuff that's sitting on your shelves and make sure you don't go beyond the 10 days. A lot of scanners don't work efficiently. Okay, if you're having a particular problem with the scanner, maybe talk to your software provider in the first instance because they might recommend a scanner that works better with their software. I know in the early days, the IPU sent out a scanner to everyone, but whether, yeah, I'm not sure how well that worked with all the different software. If your software provider recommends a scanner, we would strongly recommend you go with what they recommend because they'll know what works best with their software. If you want to phone and have a chat with someone in our office, like they have a lot of expertise in scanners, they'll certainly talk you through it and they can ring you back at whatever time suits you. Like if it's very busy and you need, say, someone to ring back at 6 o'clock in the evening, there's no problem doing that. How to use the audit option in the MPS scanner, I have no idea because I'm not familiar with the nitty-gritty of the MPS scanner, how it works. How can we access the extra slides after the webinar? I think, Rana, are the slides sent out as well as the recording?
Yeah, Grace will send the slides by the email with all even the links and everything. Yes.
Super. I think touch drawer, yeah, the interfaces are definitely different. Again, could these be standardized? It's a bit like the dispensing systems are designed in different ways. And like, I hear, for example, McLaren's have an option where you can do verification when you're packing and decommissioning when you hand out the bag. We hear pharmacists love that. We hear other pharmacists don't like it at all. So again, it really depends on how you operate in your pharmacy. Has there ever been a tutorial on what to do? There's actually a video on our website. So what I'll do is I'll actually pull that out specifically and send it to Rana to send out. So I'll give you some resources, Rana, to perhaps send out with the slides.
Thank you.
If a pharmacy decommissions, is it sufficient? Yeah, that's fine. You could close that alert. If you know when you look at the location ID, you've done it over and over again. Yeah, you could just give us the feedback that you've done that and you can go ahead and supply that pack. That's exactly. And this was a big thing when we wrote the guidance here in Ireland. We wrote the alert management guidance in consultation with the HPRA and the PSI and all the different organisations involved in them, including the IPU. And what we did want to say was if a pharmacist knows you know what's caused this alert. You can go ahead and supply the pack, but you do need to keep some sort of a record of what you've done. And NVS alerts is quite a useful place to just put a note in on the alert to say what's happened. Here in IMVO, we use NVS alerts as our record of what we do with alerts. So all of the actions we take are all captured in NVS alerts. We don't maintain a separate system. We know wholesalers use NVS alerts as their record keeping. So if you've made a decision to hand out a pack, you're satisfied the pack is authentic, just in case there was ever a query about it afterwards, it is useful to have a note to say, right, checked it and we're satisfied it was decommissioned previously before in this pharmacy and we've got and supplied it. How many people have replaced their scanners? I think a good few people have replaced them or they've bought second ones. Now, I'm not an expert. I'd probably need to get some of my ops team to talk about that. But certainly people have got second scanners. And if you think about it, the original scanners now are what they were sent out in late 2018. So you're now running into probably 6 years old, nearly 5, 6 years. So think about that. You might be starting to think about certainly, I think it's like everything else, probably spending a little bit of money and using the one that your software provider recommends. That I think is a good way to go. They know the ones that work best with their system and they'll tell you what to do with them. And if the scanner comes with any instructions to configure it, I found this a bit odd when I first came across scanners. If it comes with an instruction to scan 3 barcodes on a page, do it. It doesn't make a lot of sense that that somehow does something to the scanner, but it does something to the scanner that makes it work better. So just be careful. If you're asked to do something like that with the new scanner, follow the instructions because they're there for a reason. Okay, I don't know if there's any questions. There's some really good questions there. Scanner beeps. Yeah, this scanner beeping thing, it's funny, we hear all sorts of different views in this. Some people want beeps for everything. Some people only want beeps for alerts. Some people don't want any beeps at all. And again, there seems to be a lot of personal preference in how people work with this. It's a type of 2D barcode. Yeah, this is what they call reverse barcodes. This is something we have fed back repeatedly to manufacturers. It requires, you can actually configure your scanner to do this. And again, what I can do is I will send you, no, it's not a bad scanner. You just reconfigure the scanner to read them. So there's two things we do with these. Number one, we feed, if we come across examples of these, if you want to just pop it into us in an email, if you want to even type it in here, some examples, we can send it back to the manufacturer and encourage them not to do this. Yeah, if you call our help desk, some of the team will help. But you can actually reconfigure the scanner to read those properly. It'd be helpful if there's, yeah. Again, we hear lots of different views on this one. Do you have a click to chat? No, we don't have a chat bot, and we have considered it, but we've actually decided it's probably easier to talk to a human. And we have people available, and we use a call center, but they're very experienced, and they have scripts to cover every scenario, and then our team are available, and our operations manager, he's contactable by the call center at any time it's open. So, the support is there. Okay, so lots of questions there. Humans, yeah, that I have to say I agree with whoever wrote that. I personally don't like chatbots. Going to be very busy next week. That's absolutely fine. That's what we're here for. I'll let the team know in the morning to start expecting lots of calls. And I'm delighted if you found this useful, and hopefully you will find the service useful.
Like to be honest, Leon, a lot of like most of the pharmacists is very well engaged with the
Yeah.
planning and the FMD. But I remember myself, my training was 5 years ago, 6 years ago
Hmm.
about it, and but we moved. It's exactly what you say. We are 5 years on. Some
Yeah.
information we forgot, so a
Yeah.
fresh training and
Yeah.
look further on these details is really very handy. Um,
Yeah, I know. And this is what I was trying to work out for this presentation. Do I do lots of stuff on alert management, or do I try and do a more reflective piece? Because we do have plenty of resources available. So to sort of balance it out, I would say read the last few slides. I'll send you out a link to an alert on NMVS alerts, so you can actually look to see what to do with that. And I think that will hopefully help with you. But yeah, no, I agree with you. And it is something definitely we have seen huge, like, a couple of years ago, there was a lot of anti-FMD sentiment out there. I think the vast majority of people have realized it's not going away. We just need to get on with this. We know everyone's very busy and there's huge demands on pharmacies, but in some ways, once you settle into it, it tends to work pretty smoothly for most people. And maybe designate a technician in your pharmacy who's really interested in this sort of stuff, and let them take the lead, maybe even on training internally. And we will provide some materials that will help. I'll say provide some links. I'll get the team in the morning to put together a package, and we'll send that around to everyone.
that's brilliant. And like this, like webinar today is recorded, so we will put all the links in that page. That's where it's recorded. Again,
Sorry, I'm just noticing the question there about the 70% rate. Not really. We've looked into this every which way, because we can count the number of barcodes that have been wrongly scanned, and it's not accounting for anything close to the 30%. So there's definitely, we know there's some people who do a small amount of scanning. We know there's certain people said the locums don't scan, or they'll say when it gets busy we stop scanning, or we're aware of that, and we do appreciate locums. We actually reached out to the locums with the Windsor framework. So we've done sessions before. We are actually in contact with the locum agencies, and we ask the locum agencies to circulate material, because we do understand that the locums are a key group, um, and they need to be trained. Yeah, so we have been in touch with them.
Could I ask a question?
Of course you can, please.
So I actually had a PSI inspector today, and
Mm,
she was able to do a report where she showed. Now we scan all the time, or we thought we were scanning all the time, and then she showed a report, basically where it was our dispensing items versus the number of decommissions, the number of scans
mm.
that were happening. So I don't know. I'll have to contact whether it's a scanning issue or what we're doing wrong. I don't know what we're doing wrong, but like, should we be getting a weekly report indicating whether we're on target for scanning or off target, or can we access that?
You see, the problem we have is, first of all, every pack doesn't equate necessarily. So you will never have 100%, and we've explained this to the PSI, you'll never have 100% correlation between numbers of packs scanned versus numbers of items dispensed. Because first of all, for example, if you take a split pack, you're only going to have one decommission scan for that, but you could say, if it was a box of 500, have 17 dispensed items from that.
Mm-hmm.
Medical devices will be a dispensed item, but they're not FMD. So that doesn't count towards the So there's, but you should be able to reconcile them. Now, I just need to double check. I think there's now some sort of a new report available in our last release, and I should know the answer to this question, but I will check it. And again, I'll put some of this information in where you can actually see what's going on. Because originally the thinking was that the pharmacy software systems would allow you to run a report to see what you've done from an FMD perspective. Because we don't, for example, in IMVO, if you rang me and said, can I see what you do? We only see the transactions that generate alerts or exceptions. Even the report that the PSI gets, we have to get SolidSoft to run that as a special report, and we send that directly to the PSI. Now, they ask us to have a look at it. So, for example, we look at that report, and if we see someone with loads of verification scans and zero decommissions, clearly what's happened there is they're in verification mode.
Hmm.
We know, for example, if someone is using the McLernan system and they're doing the verification at packing and they're doing the decommission at handing over the bag to the patient, we know for each of those packs, you'll actually see two transactions. So you'll see a verification scan and a decommission. So you'll know the pharmacies are using McLaren's because they'll have twice as many verifications as decommissions, and that's fine because there's a reason for it. So
Hmm.
there are some of those specifics that leave it, they don't completely balance it, but if there's a significant mismatch, that's what the PSI would flag it and potentially ask you then to have a look at it and see
Hmm.
in, where is the gap in. And, if you want to have a look at it and if we can help with it, we'll certainly do that. Because from our perspective, with the PSI, and to be fair to the PSI, they don't want to be chasing after people who are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. If there's technical reasons why things aren't coming through, we want to find those
Hmm.
and sort those out. Like what they're interested in are the people who just don't want to do this or are just not diligent about doing it consistently.
Hmm.
Where,
Yeah,
there's
I
some
think the
technical reason that's a different ballgame and we try and sort that out.
that's what I'm saying. Like I would have been of the opinion that we were
Yeah,
doing it, but then obviously the figures maybe indicate
yeah,
otherwise.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
I,
McLaren's
I
definitely
think
its best FMD software. I'm not going to comment on that because whoever
uh,
has, sorry.
there are the system. I worked with two systems, and from these two systems, you can run a report, and the report will generate like kind of a percentage, and you can see like if your team is scanning mostly everything, because yeah, you can't scan everything. The medical devices can't scan it. The open box or the split box, you can't scan it. Um, it's actually very interesting, a meeting, and really very, very busy chat box. And thank you very much, Leon. I'm just conscious
I
that
know we've got time.
we're really running behind time. I just really appreciate, like, I know we are busy, and I know like we're finishing, almost finishing here, but there is a link. I would really appreciate if you click on that link and complete for us the survey. Again, there is a lot of information, Leonie, like I mentioned it, and there is a lot on these questions, some information like, and you might be want to follow up about something. So it is, or you maybe like go back to your provider and ask him for the training material. You can also open a new cycle today. There is, I think you will be opening so many cycle today and reflect on this cycle. I just want to thank you all for your present today, and thank you. I know you have a very busy day. Our next webinar will be on Wednesday, 11th of December at 8 p.m. It is about a breastfeeding national policy with Dr. Liz O'Sullivan. I just also want to draw to your attention about the mentoring program that the IIOP run. The mentoring program, it will be open until Sunday, the 1st of December. It is open for you if you like to participate as a mentor, or if you are wanted to be as a mentee. Um, Grace also have put the link for that, and again we will put it again, like you can find that link in the IOP, so please be involved. You can find us in LinkedIn, in Facebook, and again, Leonie, thank you very much. I really appreciate today, and was a very busy chat box. Thank you very much for your time, and have a
That's
good
great.
evening.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone. See you
Thank you,
Bye
soon.
now.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.